State Buckeyes. Hey, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Buckeye broadcast. It's a great day to be a fan of the Scarlet and Gray. I am, as ever, your host, Emmet Brady, and we are rocking and rolling through week 6 here of the NCAA 2016 season. Of course, the Buckeyes are 3-0, so this will be their 4th game of the season, and feeling pretty good about things. That's an understatement. I am feeling fantastic about the season so far. I think the Buckeyes have surprised everybody. I think they have outplayed their expectations as a group of young ball players, and I think the coaching staff has made some really wise decisions so far this year, and it's paid a lot of dividends. That's why the Bucks are number 2 in the land. And before we jump into today's game against Rutgers, the Scarlet Knights of Rutgers, we'll also talk a little bit about the Oklahoma Sooners, the domination that the Buckeyes showed a couple weeks back. And today's DAYMA fitness topic, of course, every episode of the Buckeye broadcast, I talk a little bit about a health or fitness topic, especially as it relates to football and athletics. Our goal here with the podcast is to have the healthiest football fans in the land. And today we're talking about an oft overlooked feature of probably the most durable and underappreciated part of our bodies, our feet and ankle. We really only pay attention to them when things go wrong with them, but there's a lot of maintenance you can do to make sure that that process is a lifelong healthy feet. So we talk about that a little bit as well, but taking a quick snapshot of the top 25, it's a little bit knee-jerk reaction, but it's exciting right now to be a Big Ten fan. Got 2 teams in the top 5, of course, the biggest rivals of the Buckeyes. I am a tried and true Hayton Golden Blue, born and raised Buckeye here. So seeing Michigan in the top 5 after so many years of them seeing them in the toilet is exciting, exhilarating, and portentous of a fantastic final to the season. And, of course, Alabama stays at number 1, but the points are really close. The Buckeyes are only 50 points in the voting, the AP poll, and that's the Associated Press poll. And Alabama has shown signs. Clemson is also in the top 5, and Clemson has certainly shown some weaknesses against some pretty weak teams. The team that, of course, I think is blowing everybody away is Louisville, and the Cardinals are firing on all pistons. They got an offense that is almost as good as Ohio State's, And Ohio State certainly showed up against the Sooners, the big first test a couple weeks back. Last week the Buckeyes had a bye, so there was no broadcast, nor was there a game. But against the Sooners, Ohio State dominated. It wasn't even really close. I think it reveals a few things about football. The first is that the Big 12 is not the conference that it used to be. Can't quite figure out why, but it's the problem with defense. I think they put points on the board, but they just don't have strong defenses in the Big 12 for some reason. And this year, of course, the Buckeyes with Greg Schiano, he's got to be nominated for Defensive Coach of the Year in the NCAA. His defense is just pouncing on opponents right now, and they're leading the nation right now in turnover ratio. I think they have a plus 17 or something outrageous like that so far. So even though the Buckeyes have turned the ball over a couple of times themselves, and they gave up a couple of big plays. They gave back the big kickoff return against Oklahoma, which was just, I think, a mental breakdown more than anything else. Oklahoma's not a bad team, but I don't think that they were all they were cracked up to be. I think the Buckeyes got through it real strong. Barrett didn't do much. It really wasn't. He really hasn't had too many games where he has been the superstar, but that's okay. 152 yards, 4 touchdowns, 74 yards rushing. Of course, that remarkable performance. I mean, the player of the week probably in the whole country was wide receiver Noah Brown. 4 touchdown receptions against Oklahoma, including that remarkable, that highlight film, the top 10 for the decade, where he caught the ball with the defender right up against his chest, and then he pinned the ball on the defender's chest as they fell to the ground in the back of the end zone. And he held on. Remarkable. And the rest of the team looked great. Mike Weber had his second 100-yard game, 123 yards rushing, almost 300 yards rushing against Oklahoma's vaunted defense. So what does that tell you about the Big 12 defense, The quarterback, the touted quarterback Baker Mayfield from Oklahoma, 226 yards, 2 touchdowns. He threw 2 interceptions, but to be honest with you, it was never his game to begin with. They were playing catch up from the word go. And the problem right now that teams face with Ohio State is on both sides of the ball, multiple threats, multiple receivers, multiple running backs, plus J.T. Barrett. And then on the defense, you just can't get the ball more than 5 or 7 yards downfield. That defensive backfield is just too fast, and they're just too well coached. That's really what it is. So the rest of the Buckeyes looked really good. They didn't have to do a lot of on the special teams because they pretty much owned the game. What I'm excited about, for my purposes, because I predicted the final score was 37-24, and I underestimated how much the Bucs were going to score, but I was right on the money. Oklahoma scored 24 points, and the only reason they did that was to make me look good, and it worked. How about that? So this week, looking ahead, the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, one of the newer East Coast additions to the Big Ten. They've made their presence felt in all the sports. They've been a good contribution, I think better than what Maryland has been. Maryland has really not really done much, but Rutgers and women's sports and everything, they've been a great addition, and their football team's not too shabby. Now, today's game, of course, not a big sweat, I don't think, overall. Now, Ohio State right now ranks number 3 in scoring 56 points per game, and that includes against a top 10 team like Oklahoma. So that just goes to show that if Ohio State continues to click, and what is scary is that their offense could even get better. And if that happens, then I'm not quite sure who's going to beat them. Now, of course, Florida State fell out of the top 25. They had they were dismantled by Louisville, and it was probably the worst appearance I've seen Florida State make in a game in a long time. Matter of fact, there's questions about Jimbo Fisher's future down at Florida State. The reason I'm putting this into context is because this week right now for the Buckeyes, the Rutgers game could be the week where they slide into the top number 1 position, because I think Alabama's playing Ole Miss this week, and Ole Miss is always a spoiler in that in the SEC conference, and they're playing with their hearts out this year as well. A couple of close losses for the running Rebs, but the Scarlet Knights are -3 in turnover margin, and they basically are a team that they don't have much of a downfield passing game. So most of their work is done along the line of scrimmage. They do get turnovers on the defensive side, but interesting enough, the leading receiver, Janarian Grant, is out for the year. The Rutgers top receiver hurt his ankle, so he's done. So their top threat's gone. They got a running back named Robert Martin, who's got a pretty good yards per carry. He hasn't really played any top teams yet, though. And Chris Laviano at starting quarterback is good as a quarterback. He's the 3rd in the depth chart, so their first 2 quarterbacks were injured earlier in the season. So Rutgers does share a coach. One of their coaches, I believe, came over from Ohio State at one point. Let me verify that real quick. So again, overall, I think Buckeyes not much to worry about today against Rutgers. If the Scarlet Knights come out in the first or second quarter, hitting hard, then, the Buckeyes, need to respond early. But the issue is that the Buckeyes are just too strong in the second half. They have too many players. They're too deep in too many positions with skill, not just in the numbers, but they can play so deep into a game. It bodes very well for later in the season into the playoff race and things like that, So I'll give you the prediction in just a minute, but before we do, let's talk about our feet, our little paws, the barking dogs, right? So one of the things that people don't realize about the feet is that when I call them the most unheralded part of the body, it's because the sheer amounts of pressure and pounding that our feet take, especially in our society, that we walk a lot on concrete and artificial surfaces. We don't do a lot of stretching generally as a rule. Now, as you might recall, the DAYMA fitness system is an acronym for Dance, Athletics, Yoga, Martial Arts, and very much what we try to do is explain people a system that they can develop over a long period of time that they can do little bits and pieces of to build a much more healthy lifestyle. And the foot is arguably the most complex mechanism of the human body, in the sense of it has 26 bones, 33 joints, and more than 100 muscles, tendons, and ligaments. Pretty interesting. Pretty interesting that such a complex machine as part of our body does not get more attention, especially in training. People develop their legs, they develop their muscles, their chest, their neck, and things like that. But people don't spend a lot of time on really on developing the foot. And a lot of what you have to do with the foot is building strength, building flexibility in relation to balance. Now, that sounds intuitive, but this is how it works as a structure. The first thing is the foot. There's basically three parts of your foot. There's the hind foot, the midfoot, and the forefoot. The hind foot is your ankle bone and your heel bone. Now, these are very interesting points. The tendon that attaches the calcaneus, or the heel bone, is, of course, the Achilles heel. I believe for long-term health and vitality and mobility in people, this is the most important hinge in the body, because it's constantly under torque whenever you're standing up. And most people don't ever stretch it. They might stretch their backs, they might stretch their legs, but they don't develop a good system. Circumduction is the rotation of your ankle through the entire range of motion of the joint. Circumducting the ankle, flexing it, stretching it, these things all help maintain a healthy Achilles heel. Now, why that's important as well is there's a tissue pad that goes down through your back heel. And this is where one of the major, all the nerves that innervate the bottom of your foot come in through this pad. So keeping a healthy ankle and a healthy foot is not just a matter of feeling good, it's a matter of maintaining the long-term sensitivity and accurate responses that come from that part of the innervation. The other big nerves that innervate your foot come down through your shin, across the top of your foot, and then they branch off just before your big toe. So even though the bone has so many parts, there's not as many nerves as there are inside the hand, for instance. So you can do damage to your foot and it won't be as sensitive. The other problem with the extremities, of course, is when you get swelling in there, it's kind of hard to get it out. So the midfoot, which is really interesting, has 5 bones. And this is the arch of the foot. The midfoot essentially works like an arch in a building with a keystone at the top. And you can stand straight up and down and simply push your feet into the ground to feel that arch bending. And as people, of course, age in our culture, people oftentimes wind up with flat feet and, their arches aren't as healthy. Another reason why is the forefoot, the toes, 5 toes and the proximal bones is where most of the action happens. But again, if you are not taking time to massage your own foot, to stretch it, and I mean every day, not just once a day, several times a day, take your shoes off, take your thumb and just push it into all the tender, soft parts of the foot, the pads of the foot, pull on your toes, pull them apart, stretch them apart. It's very, very important that you do this, because the long-term benefits of maintaining healthy tissue to support all those bones and joints is really one of the keys to healthy feet in the future. And I recommend walking barefoot whenever you can. Not always on hard surfaces, but definitely on soft surfaces. Once or twice a week, take your shoes off. Really feel how your foot moves every time you take a step. So that's a big one. So, and today I think we got a couple Buckeyes out with ankle injuries as well. But nonetheless, they're going to dominate. It's going to be a great game. My prediction this week, the Buckeyes against the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. It's going to be a big blowout. I think the Buckeyes can put up 40-plus points every game and then count on a few for the defense. So it's going to be 53 for the Bucks and 10 for the Scarlet Knights. 53-10, that's my prediction. And, of course, I don't gamble and I don't bet. I just do this for fun to see how it goes. But I also like to win. So until next time, thanks for tuning in to the Buckeye broadcast. I'm going to be broadcasting, doing the live feed from the Brookhouse Tavern at Chapel Hill in Akron. So we'll see you there. And until next time, go Buckeyes!